Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. It's great to be on with you. Praise be to God. Hey, we're going to be talking about the rumors that are circling about the cancelization of the traditional Latin Mass, the final solution to do away with the TLM, and how many thousands of Catholics around the world who get to enjoy the beauty and the rich tradition and patrimony of Holy Mother Church in the liturgy, the piety, the community, etc., will now have to just, I guess, be disappointed in all of that, because that is what we're dealing with. And we're going to get Father Charles Murr on the team to talk about that and why all Catholics, and not just the trad Catholics, should care about this cancelization. All of that coming up at 30 past the hour. Also on the program, we're going to have a conversation with one of the organizers of a men's rally, a rosary rally, coming up in Cincinnati in just a couple of days from now. All men are invited in the Cincinnati, Ohio area to bring their rosaries and sacramentals, and they want to unite Christendom together in defense and reparation for sins committed against the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So we're going to have a conversation with Mr. Jesse Evans from the Rosary Rally in Ohio at 14 past the hour. So lots of stories and news that we're going to be sharing with you in the show notes today over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. But do not forget, when you go to the website, make sure to check out our 25th year anniversary conference coming up August the 24th in Niagara Falls. I'm going. I can't wait to be there, and I want you to be there too. Candace Owens is going to be sharing her journey. Why did she become Catholic? What motivated her to take that leap of faith? And I really want to know what her husband's role was in all of that. Don't you? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to get to hang out with her. Raymond Arroyo is going to be there. Bishop Strickland's coming. Father Mateg, Mother Miriam, Jim Havens from The Simple Truth, myself, and producer Jake. And we want you there too. Go to thestationofthecross.com. Click on that banner and find out the details and get registered today. There are hotels with discounts and more, all on the website at thestationofthecross.com. Sign up today. Let's pray. Let's begin. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my Mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and now your saint of the day.
Saint Juliana Falconieri, pray for us. Juliana was born in Florence to a pious noble couple, almost miraculously late in their marriage, in the year of our Lord 1270. Her piety was influenced by her uncle, St. Alexis Falconieri, one of the 7 holy founders of the Servite Order, or the Order of Servants of Mary. From St. Philip Benizi, superior of the order, Juliana received the inaugural habit of the Servite Third Order, later known as the Mantellite Sisters. She served as Mother Superior of the Sisters until her death. Though she was plagued with chronic digestive illnesses all her life, Juliana remained a cheerful and enthusiastic servant of her fellow sisters and of the sick and poor for whom they cared, while also undertaking many penances and mortifications. It was said that out of pure modesty she never even looked a man in the face, and she had such a horror of sin that she grew faint at the mere mention of it. On her deathbed, in the year of our Lord 1341, Juliana suffered constant vomiting and was unable to receive the Blessed Sacrament. But at her request, the priest spread a corporal cloth across her chest and laid the host upon it. After a few moments, the host disappeared, and Juliana breathed her last. Left imprinted on her breast was the same image of a cross that had adorned the host. For more about this day and others in the Church's calendar, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons. Saint Juliana Falconieri, pray for us.
And now your headline news. Just the News reports New York's top court declines to hear Trump's appeal to the gag order. A New York top court declined to hear yesterday the gag order appeal, finding that the challenge does not raise substantial constitutional issues. Trump's legal team had appealed to the state's high court May 15th while the hush money trial was underway. His lawyers had argued that the gag order limits his rights to free speech during the 2024 presidential campaign. Since then, Trump has been found guilty on all counts by the jury, and Juan Merchant, the judge in the hush money trial, might soon rule on the request to lift the gag order that he imposed. The Hill reports new Boeing whistleblower comes forward hours before CEO's Senate testimony. Senator Richard Blumenthal's office identified the whistleblower as Sam Mohawk, a quality assurance inspector for the plane maker in Renton, Washington. Mohawk alleges Boeing improperly tracked and stored faulty parts, and that those parts were likely installed on airplanes, including the 737 MAX. Mohawk has also alleged that he has been told by his supervisors to conceal evidence from the FAA and that he is being retaliated against as a result, according to a statement from the Senate Homeland Security's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. The NYPD is reporting, or rather, I wish it was the NYPD. It's not, though. It's the NYP, the New York Post. They're reporting Dem majority FCC helping George Soros fast-track takeover of nationwide radio network. Soros, 93 years old, still at it, pumped $400 million into Odyssey in February, a network which reaches 165 monthly listeners and includes a handful of conservative shows from hosts including Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Glenn Beck, and many others. But their influence is likely to be muted if the billionaire takes over and imposes his agenda, as has happened with other media acquisitions. A source with knowledge of the deal told the Post, quote, "The idea that George Soros is buying hundreds of local radio stations right before a national election and will just keep broadcasting Sean Hannity and other conservative talk radio hosts is just not credible," close quote. Under existing FCC rules, foreign company ownership of U.S. radio stations is not allowed to exceed 25%. But a filing acquired by the Post details Soros asking the commission to make an exception. The FCC did not respond to the Post for a request for a comment. And those are your headline news. Golly gee whiz, what could go wrong with George Soros owning the nation's conservative talk radio? Anyway, the gospel today comes to us from Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 through 13. I'm taking the gospel today from the 1962 Missal in honor of the traditional Latin Mass that is under attack, let's just say. At that time, Jesus said to the people, "Then shall the kingdom of heaven be like to 10 virgins, who taking their lamps went out to meet the bridegroom and the bride. And 5 of them were foolish and 5 wise. But the 5 foolish, having taken their lamps, did not take oil with them. But the wise ones took oil in their vessel with the lamps. And the bridegroom tarrying, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye forth to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. The wise answered, saying, Lest perhaps there be not enough for us and for you, go you rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. Now whilst they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they were ready, and went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. But at last came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answering said, Amen, I say to you, I know you not. Watch you therefore, because you do not know the day nor the hour. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Taking from the Haydock Catholic Bible Commentary, praise be to God, writing back in the 19th century, Father Haydock had to say, 10 virgins, by these are signified all mankind. By the bridegroom, Christ. By the bride, the church. By oil, grace and charity. The custom among the Jews was that the bridegroom should go to fetch his spouse and conduct her with solemnity to his house. This was the conclusive ceremony and done in the night time. The young woman of the vicinity, in order to do her honor, went to meet her with lighted lamps. So this was an actual custom. This is why Jesus used it to teach us the lesson that we need to keep our oil lamps full of grace and charity. The commentary goes on, the wise took oil in their lamps, the necessary qualifications of grace and charity, joined with divine faith and an additional supply of oil in their vessels, i.e., they laid up in store for themselves a solid foundation of good works. St. Gregory the Great teaches that by the lamps faith is meant, and by the light good works. Hence, he concludes that the bad, although they have lamps, i.e. faith, no less than the good, shall be excluded because their lamps are out, i.e. their faith is dead, without charity and good works to enlighten them. Faith without works is dead. James told us that. He was very, very clear. You must walk the walk and talk the talk. It's both and. It's not either or. So you could claim you have faith, but if you don't live like you have faith, if the fact that you say Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior, and you don't, change your life and reprioritize your life according to that statement of faith, then exactly what is your faith? It is superfluous. It is shallow indeed. In fact, if you say that you believe, then you will live as though you will believe, and it will be testimony enough, your life, to all that would see you, know you, and interact with you, that your faith is not only sincere, but believable. So fill your lamps while you have time, because the cry is coming, and you don't want to be caught with the door shut and you on the outside. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. It's good to be on with you. Praise be to God. Coming up at 30 past the hour, Father Charles Murr is going to be on the team. We're going to be talking about this rumor surrounding a new document that might come out on the anniversary of Traditionis Custodes of all days to do the final solution, to finally ban the traditional Latin Mass. What's interesting about the story to me is this connection with Archbishop Vittorio Francesco Viola, OFM, who is sort of the guy behind it all, apparently, supposedly, allegedly. He also wears the ring of Bugnini, and that's the connection I find most fascinating. And we're going to have a conversation with Father Charles Murr about Bugnini. Who was Bugnini? What did he do? Why did he do it? And where did he end up? Coming up at 30 past the hour. Do join us if you can. But there are lots of stories in the news that are of great concern to us, and I'm sure they are to you as well. And as you know, it's June, so it's not Pride Month. If it's anything to be proud of, it's in the Sacred Heart of the most loving Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And we're on that team, and we are so glad to see others on the team as well. In fact, there are men standing up to make reparation for the blasphemies and crimes committed against the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And Jesse Evans joins us now from Ohio to tell us about what his men are doing there. Jesse, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on, Joe.
Praise be to God. So a rosary rally for men in Cincinnati, Ohio. Tell us about the event that you're hosting.
Yeah, well, June 22nd, this is their annual, Pride community, this is their annual Pride parade. And apparently, and I don't know for how many years this has been going on, but yeah, I know for 50 years they've been doing the parade, and they begin the parade right next to the cathedral in Cincinnati. So as far as we can tell, the cathedral sort of sits empty on that day, and there's people gathering all around it for the parade. And, we don't want that to happen this year. So we're going to meet there. We're going to be there. And the goal is to make public reparation for public sins, especially those sins that in this case, which are being celebrated, promoted, sanctioned, and, celebrated by our culture. So, this is obviously a grievous offense to God. And, it doesn't really matter what month it's happening in. We Catholics have a month devoted to everything. But my thought would be that, in this case, it's like we have the Feast of St. John the Baptist coming up, the Nativity, and this is not lawful, like he said. we should be unwilling to affirm these things. And that's partly what we're doing as well. But the goal is to come out on Saturday, 3 days from now. And we're inviting all men, all Catholic men, to come out and join us. We'll have flags and banners, and we'll be praying the rosary, making acts of reparation and acts of consecration to the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Why is it important for it to be men only? I like that. That caught my eye on your flyer. It says, men only, please. Why is that?
Yeah, well, the dynamic just changes a lot, and these are like pretty, I don't know if you've ever been to a pride parade sort of in opposition to it, or really in opposition to anything. I think more people since 2020, like the crazy things that were going on in 2020 with the upheaval in the country, more people have been exposed to these kinds of environments and realized that it's almost like a war zone. So we don't want the women to be exposed to that, and we don't want the men to have to defend women. So otherwise it takes on a whole different nature. If the men are down there and they feel like they have to protect women, then they're likely to get violent as well, just for good reason. But we're not going to be, hostile or anything like that. We truly just want to pray and keep our peace, and make reparation. And we just don't feel like, that's a good environment for women to be exposed to. But we're asking women if they want to participate to spend an hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament or stay home and pray the rosary, support your husband so that he can go out and do this work. So
I think it's incredibly important for men to lead this charge and to stand up. I was very proud of Ross and the men in Louisiana recently. They held one as well. And I want to see men do this from all over the country. And I think this is a growing movement. Do you think that something is igniting in the hearts of Catholic men across our country?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I was inspired by others, and probably for a couple of years I've wanted to do something like this, and it just hasn't worked out. But, last year we did a small thing, this same event last year. We had a small group of guys, and we marched in and out of the crowd. We marched along the parade route. We carried flags. We prayed, and we were hated by everyone there, but we were hated for the right reasons. And I think that definitely ignited something in us to just say, well, this is something we need to keep doing. And, so this year the goal is to do it in a more kind of controlled way, to be stationed somewhere and to be, near, a Catholic landmark. In this case, we might as well, be near the cathedral. So that's what we're going to do. And yeah, I think it is. I think more people are waking up to these things. Of course, we know that like the Pride Parade is happening in almost every major city for like the last 50 years, but we've been silent. And I think that's probably, like when you understand the reparation prayers and the necessity of them to the Sacred Heart, it usually has to do with the indifference of Catholics towards the Blessed Sacrament. And in this case, I think also the indifference towards sin, the fact that so many Catholics just stand by and do nothing, when our whole culture is failing. And then, we spend too much time, angry or frustrated about the issues in the church and trying to fix those. This is something we can do. This is something we ought to do. We're meant to be sanctifying the home and culture and fighting back against these evils. So I do think people are waking up to that and realizing this is something they can do. This is something they ought to do. So,
what kind of response are you seeing from the men in your community?
We're actually seeing a really good response. We weren't sure what we'd get this year. We were committed, even if it was like last year was like 15 of us. We thought if we double this year, that'd be great. But we're really seeing a bigger response this time. And I expect us to have a good, number of men out there. And of course, we've been able to spread it. And this is really grassroots. No one in our group is, our little core group here is a great, a big time promoter or super well connected or anything like that. We're just answering a call, consecrating ourselves, and being humble servants, as much as we can. And I think that's taking off. So, but yeah, there is a good response. We're excited that, there seems to be some momentum now to do this. So, in our area. And so, yeah, I mean, any of your listeners in the Cincinnati area, should come out. We'll be at the cathedral at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, this Saturday morning, 3 days from now. So
A minute ago, we talked about why you were only asking for men, but what about sons? Is there like an age appropriateness that you would say that a man could bring his son to stand next to him?
I would think so. I don't have a son myself, but I would think so, yeah. That's probably the discretion of the father. But, if you have a son who's mature enough to maybe handle this kind of an environment, there's a grace there too, for the men who show up. Obviously there's a lot of filth and immodesty, sometimes just nudity actually. But you're being exposed to a lot of nasty stuff, but you're there to pray, and it's almost like you see through it, most of the time you're so disgusted by what you're seeing. So you just keep praying. And, but I do think, a young enough, an old enough boy, son, that would be appropriate. It just would be up to the discretion of the father for sure.
I think one of the challenges we face in this modern age of ours, in this culture and this society we live in today, is there's a real effeminacy in most men. We're too busy eating cheese pizzas or whatever to really like take our physical health serious, let alone our spiritual or our mental or just courage, standing up to injustice in the world itself. We don't love confrontation. Too many men are addicted to pornography and are afraid of their own shadows in that regard. So when it comes to confrontation, they just don't want any part of it. They don't want to hear confrontational things, and they don't want to experience confrontational things. And yet, I think an event like yours is important because I think it could reawaken inside of a man this natural call we have to right wrongs in our own backyards, right? If we see something wrong, it's as a men, we're supposed to go and make that correct. Like Adam in the garden, we're supposed to go into the wilderness and till the weeds until we make it a garden paradise. But yet right now, I mean, what might you get? A couple of hundred guys? I mean, in a city that probably has thousands of Catholic men, like I almost hear the voice of Jesus saying, where are the other 9? Do you see it that way? I mean, men need to learn to confront evil, and I think they're afraid of it.
Oh, yeah, I definitely do. And that's something I've been thinking and talking about with the guys is that, I think sometimes people aren't doing anything partly because there's no good options too, so like there needs to be somebody who just takes the lead on things like this. So that might be you. If you're thinking it needs to happen, you might be the one that needs to do it. But like, providing an opportunity, I'm realizing, once people can kind of envision what it is, then they do want to do it, But I think it's, that conflict of, your concupiscible appetite and, your desire for pleasure and easy life and comforts and, that effeminacy, but one of the ways to overcome that, and this I learned from my priest, is through the irascible appetite, letting that take over, because here is a wolf, and, a man, or a big ugly dog or something, a man wants to step in front of the dog and maybe fight the dog or whatever you have to do to protect, what it's going after, and in this case that, that can help us conquer the concupiscible appetite and stop being so effeminate. If we see these evils and we do nothing, then we're not men at all. Yeah, we're being effeminate, it's really sad. But I think, basically giving people something they can do is just a huge step, and if there's really nothing manly to do, then people, men are just frozen because they want to go do something crazy. They want to do something bold, but there's nothing, there's no options, it seems like. So I think, just getting, doing stuff like this and, making it happen is a huge part of the battle, because then the men will come and they'll realize, wow, this is it. This is what I've been missing. I've needed this, So I think that is a huge problem in our time, in our culture, and we have to give ourselves, some kind of outlet, but, so.
I love what you said a minute ago and about this is something we can do. I talk a lot about what's broken in the church, what's wrong in the church, the scandals in the church. I talk a lot about that. But you're right. This is something we can go do. This is tangible. We don't have to have a letter from the Vatican or permission from the bishop or a priest to go stand and pray in reparation for these grave crimes and blasphemies, let alone actually pray for the individuals engaged in those blasphemies. Because who else is going to pray for them if it's not for us? Who will pray for their conversion and ask God for extra graces, prevenient graces for these people committing these blasphemies? So, Jesse Evans, hats off to you, my brother. Amazing. I love the courage. I love the leadership. It's called Men of Christendom Unite. It's a rosary rally this Saturday, June the 22nd, 10 a.m. in Cincinnati, down at the cathedral there. Check it out. Spread the word. If you know anybody in the Ohio Valley, let them know to make a trip to Cincinnati this weekend. Jesse, God bless you. God love you, my friend. Thanks for being on with us. Love to have you back.
Thank you, Jeff.
Coming up after the break, we're going to be talking about the final solution to cancel the traditional Latin Mass with Father Charles Murr. Stick around. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, this is Zach, Director of Appeals and Sponsorships. I want to thank everyone who has supported our spring appeal. Your generosity has been extraordinary. We have made some amazing progress the past few weeks toward our spring appeal goal, now needing only $14,000 to reach it. And we've received copies of a special book published by TAN titled Meditations on the Passion and Death of Christ and written by Father Ignatius of the Side of Christ. You can receive a copy of this excellent book with a donation of $1 a day or more. That's $360 one time or $30 per month. Bring your prayer life to a whole new level through meditations on our Lord's suffering and death. Take advantage of this offer while supplies last. Call 1-877-711-8500 during normal business hours. Go to thestationofthecross.com, use the donation page of your iCatholic radio app, or return the envelope from one of our mailings. Thank you, and may God bless you and your family.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain, and here are your headline news. Daily Wire reports federal judge blocks Iowa law allowing state authorities to arrest and deport illegal immigrants. An Iowa bill that was signed into law by Republican Governor Kim Reynolds back in April, allowing state authorities to arrest and deport some illegal immigrants, was blocked by a federal judge who ruled on Monday that the policy was unconstitutional. U.S. District Judge Stephen Locher was appointed by President Biden and wrote that the Iowa's legal reentry law has violated the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution and interferes with the federal government's authority to enforce immigration laws. The Department of Justice sued Iowa over the law last month, arguing that the state was disregarding the U.S. Constitution and settled Supreme Court precedent. Breitbart reports impeachment inquiry says Hunter's lawyer used Joe Biden's position to discourage the SEC probe. Hunter Biden's lawyer invoked President Joe Biden's then position as vice president in what appeared to be an attempt to discourage further scrutiny from the Securities and Exchange Commission into the investigation of a tribal bond scheme that implicated Hunter's business partner, Devin Archer. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer and Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan are demanding that the SEC divulge information about its probe involving Hunter's business associates and interconnected entities. And Catholic Vote reports Popular Science magazine calls for government oversight of homeschooling. Scientific American released a newsletter Monday calling for federal government oversight and regulations to be imposed on families who homeschool. The magazine also called for parents who homeschool their children to be required to undergo a background check, the same as K-12 teachers. Additionally, homeschool instructors could be required to submit documents every year to their local school district or to a state agency to show that their children are learning. Close quote. Perhaps is it what they're learning that concerns you most? Just wondering. Asking for a friend. Those are your headline news. I think that's reason number 752 billion why I live in a state that gives us freedom as homeschoolers to homeschool our kids the way we want, the way we desire, and not the way you desire. Praise be to God. Nonetheless, we are expecting Father Charles Murr to join us at any moment. I want to talk about this rumor that's been spreading, coming from Rorate Chaley's website. We talked a little bit about it yesterday in our Aftershow. You can find that on the YouTube channel or in our podcast feed as well. Just go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT to get signed up to the email list and to the podcast while you're there. That would be amazing. Joining the email list gives you access to the private Telegram group, which is our community that we hang out with 24/7. In fact, I think I share more about my personal life in that group than I do on any other social media now these days. I used to do a lot more elsewhere. Now I kind of don't. I just prefer hanging out with the insiders. Praise be to God. So good morning to you, ACT insiders. But nonetheless, yesterday, producer Jake and I were chatting it up about the rumor of a new document coming for the final solution to the traditional Latin Mass. And while we're waiting for Father Charles Murr to join us, I'll just kind of catch you up. Essentially, here's the deal. It doesn't feel like the Traditionis Custodes document that came out a couple of years ago has done the trick, according to some at the Vatican. And they really, really need us, trads. I'm a trad. I'm a traditional Catholic. My family and I go to a traditional Catholic parish. Praise be to God. Many do. But nonetheless, they feel that Traditionis Custodes didn't go far enough. Not enough bishops were imposed it. And therefore, they need a new document that will be the final solution. Now, a couple of other tidbits of information have come out since then that I find incredibly fascinating, to include an article also out of Rorate Caeli and LifeSite News to follow up on the story. But the Rorate Caeli one is the one I'm going to quote to you right now. Headline says, Archbishop Viola, the violator of tradition, the dangerous secretary of divine worship, and the man behind the attempts to ban the traditional Mass, his letter to the Melbourne Archbishop. I'll summarize a bit for you, but I want to make an argument here. Why should non-traditional Catholics care about a document that wants to ban the traditional Mass? That's the argument that I kind of want to get into today. And again, we're hoping for Father Charles Murr to join us. We're not sure why he's not on with us. Hopefully he'll join us at any moment. If not, we'll reschedule him, but hopefully at any moment. Now, this is a very interesting story. It says, who is Archbishop Vittorio Francesco Viola OFM? The Secretary of the Dicastery for Divine Worship is said to be proud to wear the episcopal ring of none other than the devious creator of the Novus Ordo, Archbishop Annibale Bugnini. Now, I know that sentence will be harsh to some listeners. Some that go to the Novus Ordo will hear that, and that would feel incredibly offensive, that sentence. I can appreciate that. But it's the connection to Bugnini that I think is the most fascinating. If this is true, and I certainly have no idea if it's in fact true, that Archbishop Viola wears the ring of Bugnini, but if it is true, it's like Hollywood could not have written a better character for the drama. Bugnini, if you don't know, and I would encourage you to check out Mass of the Ages. It's a 3-part documentary series that now they're creating additional content related to the subject matter. A 3-part documentary series on the Mass of the Ages. But their second installment covered the Bugnini story, I think, with a lot of detail. But Bugnini was the man who was basically in charge of drafting the Novus Ordo Mass, what you would consider the Novus Ordo Mass today. He drafted on a napkin, of all things. And as the second part of that documentary series makes clear, a lot of cuts were made. A lot of edits in the traditional Latin Mass were made. The Mass of the Ages, in fact. And Bugnini seemed to have an agenda. He seemed to want, at all cost, to reinvent the liturgy that so many millions of Catholics enjoyed over so many centuries. Now, there was an organic development to the liturgy. Yes, of course, we know this. It did organically develop over the centuries. It's true. But the Mass that we would call the Novus Ordo, and the Mass that we call the Extraordinary Form, as Benedict XVI called it, or what we call the Tridentine Mass, or the traditional Latin Mass, I think one of the things that has been important to me, because I did not start off going as a Catholic. I was Protestant. I became Catholic. It took time, and then it would be years and years before I would even darken the door of a traditional Latin Mass. So, I mean, I'm pretty new to all of this, just to be honest with you. But for me, one of the key points from my understanding was, I have a devotion to St. Padre Pio. I have a devotion to St. Max Colbert, to St. Vincent Ferrer. St. St. Philip. I mean, there's just so many saints that I have a devotion to that I love, and I ask for their intercessions all the time. You think of St. Catherine. You think of St. Therese of Lisieux. I mean, some of the greatest saints that you can think of in your mind right now all went to the traditional Latin Mass. And if they were to darken the door of a Novus Ordo Mass today, I think one would have to wonder, what would they think? What would they think about that? So I'm not trying to, throw rocks at my brothers and sisters who go to the Novus Ordo Mass. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But I just want to plant this seed of common sense here. Why would we, and here's the question, why would we want to focus our attention in a day and a time when there is so many more pressing issues to discuss, to wrestle with? Why would we want to spend time, effort, and dare I even say talent coming out of the Vatican to further suppress the traditional Latin Mass? But, yesterday, Kennedy Hall on his YouTube, I think it was yesterday, man, it might have been the day before, Kennedy Hall on his YouTube channel, he made this point, and I think it's a great point. I think it's one that we should consider. And that is, in the 1960s, when Bugnini was writing out the Novus Ordo on a napkin to make it look more like what the Protestants might consider worship, then, so that they would be more tolerable of it, maybe even more open to it. Is this a veiled effort to reunite the lost tribes, so to speak, the ecumenical communities that went into schism in the Protestant Revolution? Bugnini seemed to think that was one of his or seemed to suggest that was one of his intentions, to bring things down towards the Protestant community to make it more tolerable for them. Let's assume that's his intention for the sake of the conversation in the moment. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm going to leave aside the fact that Bugnini was an avowed Freemason. We'll just put that to the side for a second. Just think about the intention, the ecumenical will to try to reunite Protestants back to the faith. Okay, that seems like a fair enough intention, a desire to want that, I would say would be good. But do the ends justify the means, I think is the real question in our mind. But nonetheless, in the 60s, as Kennedy Hall pointed out on his channel just the other day, you had millions, most of the world's Catholics, the vast majority of the world's Catholics would have experienced the Mass, the liturgy, in the traditional 1962 form, or even the pre-55 form. They would have experienced the Mass, the liturgy, more akin to the Mass of the ages. Now fast forward to our time. It's a small sliver, a growing small sliver, but a small sliver nonetheless of Catholics on planet Earth who enjoy, want deeply, love the traditional forms of piety and liturgy and community, frankly. And now we're going to see the Vatican put out a document that's going to force the hand of bishops to kill off the traditional communities there. So those Catholics, the vast majority of which aren't spending a lot of time questioning Vatican II, aren't spending a lot of time trying to rail against Pope Francis or the Vatican or anything like that. They simply want more of what Holy Mother Church has to offer by way of the rich history of patrimony and tradition. They want more of the smells and bells. They want more of the intention. They want more of that traditional Catholic community life, not less. And they are the targets? Does that pass the smell test? If you don't go to the traditional Latin Mass and you're a Novus Ordo Catholic, as I was and my family were for many, many years, I believe you ought to care. I believe you ought to care about this. Going back to the Rurate Celi article on this, Archbishop Viola, who is behind this document, rumors have it it'll come out on July 16th, which is on the anniversary of Traditionis Custodes, who wears the ring of Bugnini. I would argue that there is an intention behind that to be the successor of Archbishop Annibale Bugnini and to carry out and to maybe further his cause of killing off the traditional Latin Mass. That seems more divisional to me than it does unifying. What Jake and I said yesterday in the Aftershow commentary, again, you can find it on the channel, we talked about how the real bottom line here is to be on the team. We want team players. I mean, contrast that with what's going on in India right now and how Pope Francis has laid down the law in India because you have the vast majority of priests there who do not want to obey Pope Francis on his requirement that they say Mass ad orientem. It's a weird kind of set of circumstances. Pope Francis wants Indian Catholics, those priests, to say ad orientem, facing the east. And they want to be versus populum, facing the people, kind of like at the Novus Ordo, right? So Pope Francis has said, if you don't comply, you're going to be excommunicated. You're going to be in schism. And as of right now, they are burning his letter, and they have no intention of complying with his request. There is a major division going on in the church in India right now over all of that. So there is an effort there to force that unity, to force that issue. Similar, there was the Archbishop in Australia who, trying to obey the precepts of Traditionis Custodes, had to write back to the Home Office to beg permission to allow the traditional Latin Mass community to continue. I mean, I thought he was the bishop of his diocese. He represents Christ in his diocese. And yet he has to call home and ask for permission from the Home Office to allow a group of Catholics within his diocese who want to be in communion, who want to be obedient, and to be a part of the flock to continue to enjoy the 1,000+ years of rich tradition and history in the Church of Latin Mass. Nope, they're not allowed, was the answer. You need to be a team player. We'll throw out tradition, we'll throw out unity, so long as you're a team player, seems to be the moral of the story. More on this coming up after the break. We'll figure out what's going on with Father Charles Murr, too. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take. Bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean, and it's great to be on with you. Praise be to God. We've been trying to get Father Charles Murr on the hook today. We had him scheduled, but I'm not sure what's going on, but we love Father Charles Murr, so we'll definitely try to get him back. But we're talking about the rumors surrounding the cancelization of the traditional Latin Mass. Another document inbound. Traditionis Custodes came out, I guess, 3 years ago, and there's talk of another document, a follow-up document coming out on the anniversary, July 16th, to kind of seal the deal, make the final solution to do away with it. I guess we're going to find out. Jake and I talked about it yesterday in the Aftershow, and, our bottom line feeling is they may try, but I don't think they're going to be successful. And the question is, how hard will they try? Because I'm also not convinced that Pope Francis truly believes in the cause. In fact, I would have a controversial opinion about this. I think Pope Francis doesn't have a whole lot of care or concern about liturgy at all, Novus Ordo or otherwise. That was my point yesterday, and I continue to hold that point. And surely you might have a different one. I want to know it. We'll be talking to you directly in the after show in the commentary. So make sure to leave a comment with us over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT is a great place to find the live video player plus the links to the show underneath where we are taking and reading comments. We want you on the team. Let us know. Jake, put up a poll on YouTube. Let's take a straw poll, see how everybody's feeling about whether or not, in fact, it'll happen. But I want to go back to the Rate Caeli point because, again, my argument is if you're not a traditional Catholic, because I was for many years, I think you ought to care about this. Not because you plan to go to the traditional Latin Mass, but because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't pass the smell test. I'm going to give you an argument. What if you were to learn that the Vatican was applying pressure to the Eastern Orthodox, wanting them to change their divine liturgy to make it look more like a Novus Ordo, to be on the team as a prerequisite for reunification, for unity, and to get rid of the schism and the divisions that we've had over the last 1,000 years more? Would you be okay with forcing the Orthodox, the Ruthenians, the Coptics, the Russians even, the Ukrainians, or the countless other Orthodox, would you be okay with forcing them to change their liturgies to look more like the Novus Ordo so that we can all be on the same page? Would you be okay with that? I'm going to argue I can't hear your voice right now, but I'm going to argue that you are not okay with that. Not that you plan to go to the Orthodox, not that you plan to, attend a Ukrainian Rite Mass or a Ruthenian or Coptic or any of the others, a Syrian. No, I'm not suggesting that you plan on doing that, but I would argue that you would be like, no, of course not. Why can't they have their tradition? They should be able to have their tradition. Agreed. I agree. For the same reason I agree that the Latin Mass and the Latin Rite Church in the West should also be allowed its tradition. Why can we in one breath say, I'm okay with the Orthodox having theirs, but I am not okay with the West having ours? Well, one potential answer to that also comes to us from Rate Caeli. Rate Caeli, they did an interview with Andrea Grillo. He is he's basically one of the chief voices from a lay perspective behind Traditionis Custodes. He was asked in the very first question, Dr. Anthony Stein covered this quite a bit today on Return to Tradition. He was asked, hey, why can't we have both? I almost canonized him. Benedict XVI, God rest his soul, pray for his repose. Benedict XVI, he wanted a sort of a hybrid option. This is why he came up with a Summorum Pontificum. On my birthday, July 7th, 2007, Benedict XVI promulgated the Summorum Pontificum, basically reminding the church that the traditional Latin Mass was never abrogated. It was never done away with. There was an effort to make it appear, look, feel like, seem like it had been, but it never was. And in fact, he opened up the ability for priests all over the world to say the traditional Latin form of the Mass without needing permission, which led to a spread, a flourishing, and growth to the traditional Latin Mass again that had been so severely attacked under Bugnini, who ended up being cast out of the Vatican and sent packing to Iran, by the way. Let that sink in for a second. So the Summorum Pontificum opened the doors under Benedict XVI to a hybrid model, an extraordinary and an ordinary form of the Mass in the West. Well, this gentleman that they interviewed here, Andrea Grillo, which we are going to be linking to in the show notes today, by the way. You can find it on the Rate Caeli blog, though, as well. And he basically answers the question, because we want everyone on the same page, you will be a team player, even if we have to force the issue. So where's the charity in that, I ask? You are going to do more harm than good. You are causing more division than you are unity in your vitriolic, as my description, vitriolic cause to carry on the legacy of Bugnini. You have Catholics who want to be in communion with Rome. You have Catholics who do not spend all that much time, squabbling over the difficulties in Vatican II. And there are difficulties in Vatican II. In fact, next month, I'm going to be reading to you a document from the Vatican on the anniversary of when it was issued from the Vatican website to maybe raise some of those concerns over Vatican II. There are, in fact, issues of Vatican II, but you have lots of traditional Catholics who actually don't waste much time or breath discussing the issues of Vatican II. Instead, they just want to grow in greater holiness and sanctity, and they want to be, in the heart and the richness of patrimony and tradition. As St. Paul would say to us from his epistle, hold fast to that which was handed on, either by word of mouth or by letter. So that's where we're at. And yet there is an effort, a desire, a push, an agenda coming out of the Vatican, it would seem, to try to kill off, to go after this tiny little group, this sliver of Catholics on planet Earth. And it's growing. And maybe therein lies the rub, that they don't like the fact that it's growing. They don't want their influences, which is why we find a lot of traditional Latin Mass communities on the outskirts, in the slums, and the bad neighborhoods. Would you want your Mass to always be in the worst part of town? Don't you worry about your car, your kids, etc.? Yeah, that's kind of where we find ourselves these days, on the outskirts. And no matter how much we say, hey, we want to be on the team, doesn't matter. We still get the heavy hand of the law. But there was a document that came out many years ago, back in the 16th century, under Pope Pius V, called Quo Primum. And I want to quote a bit of this document to you because I think it's important for you to hear it, especially if you are not a traditional Catholic. This document by Pope Pius V from 1570, Quo Primum, I'm going to link to it in the show notes. You can read it for yourself in its entirety. But here's a quote. Quote, "In virtue of our apostolic authority, we grant and concede in perpetuity," kind of means forever, doesn't it? "That for the chanting or reading of the Mass in any church whatsoever, this missal is hereafter to be followed absolutely, without any scruple of conscience or fear of incurring any penalty, judgment, or censure, and may freely and lawfully be used. Nor are superiors, administrators, canons, chaplains, and other secular priests or religious of whatever title designated obligated to celebrate the Mass otherwise than as enjoined by us. We likewise declare and ordain that this present document cannot be revoked or modified, but remains always valid and retains its full force. Would anyone, however, presume to commit such an act, i.e. altering Quo Primum, he should know that he will incur the wrath of Almighty God and of the blessed apostles, Peter and Paul." Pope Pius V said that. Not me. Pope Pius V said that. So it would seem to me that the mind of the church doesn't get to change just because there's a new wind blowing this way or that. Because times change does not mean the church changed, because the church is the bride of Christ, married to the Savior Jesus Christ, who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I want the Mass of the ages. Why should they attack us? Ask that. We'll see you tomorrow. God love you.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network is dedicated to answering the critical need of access to quality, consistent, professional, and proven Catholic programming. We cannot rely on other media outlets to properly represent our church. Catholic radio reaches Catholics, non-Catholic Christians, and non-believers alike. As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent of your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported.
And we're back. Welcome to the Aftershow, everyone.
Glory be to God on high. Guess who's joining us? Father Charles Murr is in the house. Praise be to God. Father Charles, welcome to the team. Glad to see you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Oh, we're so close. We're so close.
We'll get the audio working 1 second.
I think I'm going to have to. I think I'm going to have to move Jake to Spain, just so we could make sure we smooth out all of the complications in getting Father Charles.
I think we have you now, Father. There you are.
The distance is terrible. As you can see, I just came in. It's raining in Spain, and it's not true that it stays mainly on the plain.
I was going to say
it comes also up here in the highlands. And I just got done with tending the sheep and the goats. I'm sorry. I thought we were on for tomorrow. Well, my life. You couldn't keep up with my life. I'm telling you, it's insane. Tell me, Joseph, how are you?
I'm glad you're doing it and not me, because you're right. I couldn't keep up with your life. Praise be to God. But I am glad you're here. Nonetheless, I am glad you're here. I want to talk to you about these rumors coming out of the Vatican that they intend to try to kill off the traditional Latin Mass on the anniversary of Traditionis Custodes. How quaint that is. And one of the aspects to the story that I'm fascinated with, that I really want to get your take on, and Rurate Celi's been sort of leading the charge on the reportage of this, and in one of their articles that we're linking to today, they mention Archbishop Vittorio Francesco Viola OFM, from the Secretary of the Dicastery for Divine Worship, who apparently, allegedly, reportedly is proud of wearing the ring of Archbishop Annibale Bugnini. I don't know if that's true, but that sounds like a Bond villain move to me.
Listen, it sounds crazy enough to be true in the Roman Curia. Yeah,
right, exactly. So I wanted to get you on the program to talk about that connection and get you to remind us, as you've done in the past and done so many other places. Let's talk about Bugnini. Who was Archbishop Annibale Bugnini, and what did he do?
Well, I just threw out 2 days ago the description that Father Luis Boyer made of Annibale Bugnini. He said he was a man who was a man bereft of culture and of education, I believe. He had no time for him, and also honesty. He said he was a dishonest man. Now, this is a man who worked with him for 10 years and knew him very well. No one really liked him. No one really liked him, but everyone feared him. Right? Yeah. And that was it. And Bugnini was, let me put it this way, Joe. I lived in Italy for 10 years. There are a great number of Italians who are just middle-class, good people Italians.
Sure.
There are classless Italians, like we have in every society, but there are classy Italians. There are Italians of real class that you don't find normally in American society or Western society. They're their own class. Bugnini was not belonging to that class. Let me put it that way. Nor the middle class. He was. Well, as Father Luis Boyer said, a man who had no culture, and no honesty. And when he said that he had no honesty, Boyer gave examples of that. And his examples of that were this. Bugnini was the go-between between Pope Paul VI and his committee. He had a committee working on liturgical changes, a committee of about 10. Well, some of them were Protestants also. The people who made up our new mass were Protestants. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, and really lovely.
I don't know if there's a Protestant, stupid enough to invite a Catholic onto their committee to redo their services.
That's right.
I can't.
Why doesn't it always? It never works in the reverse. I never know why.
No, it doesn't. It just doesn't work that way. Anyway, right. Bugnini was the go-between to Pope Paul VI and to his committee, and he would actually lie to each party, to the Pope and then to the committee. He would tell the Pope when the Pope objected to a change, whether it be small or large, that Bugnini was pushing. He wanted this modified. He wanted that changed. The Pope would say, there's no need for that. And he said, but Holy Father, the committee says there is. And now this is a committee of experts that we've called together, and they're working on this, and they say that it is. Well, and then the Pope would defer to the committee. When the committee was against something, Bugnini would say, the Holy Father wants it. He demands on this. And it wasn't true. None of it was true. What was true was Bugnini wanted what Bugnini wanted.
Right.
And since there wasn't one way of checking this with that, finally, Father Luis Boyer, who I got to meet, I met him in San Francisco shortly before he died. Father Luis Boyer, who was a Protestant convert, a Catholic convert from Protestantism. He was a man of God. He was very convinced of what he was doing, and I think he worked sincerely to be as faithful as he could to everything that was Catholic. He left his whole livelihood from before to become Catholic. So you don't do that easily and then abandon everything. So Luis Boyer was a man of faith, and he certainly was when I met him, because he was objecting to all of the liturgical changes that had caused so much liturgical abuse. Well, Luis Boyer one day had the opportunity of meeting Pope Paul VI himself in person. And that's when he found out that for years this had been happening.
Yeah.
And he said to the Holy Father, but Holy Father, we changed our opinion because you were insistent on such and such a change. The Pope said, that's not true at all. And the Pope then told him, but I changed my opinion on such and such because you, the committee, were insistent. He said, not true at all. So it was Bugnini who did all of this. And when it finally came out, the accusations against him for being a Freemason, that was it. That was when Pope Paul VI had enough. Also, Archbishop Benelli, who was the sostituto in the Secretary of State, they had all had enough, and they got rid of him and sent him to Iraq.
I've asked you this question before. I asked you this question in the past when we've talked about this, and I'm going to ask it again just for the sake of those that may not be as familiar with the story, but it still boggles my mind, and that is, okay, wasn't Bugnini associated with the Freemasons? And number one, number two, if Paul VI catches them in a conversation and goes, why are you telling people I said this? I didn't say that. What are you doing? Like, why didn't he go, you know what? I'm reversing this whole process. Forget all of this. We're not doing this. This is a manipulation. I'm being set up. Why wouldn't Paul VI, like if he had concerns, if he saw red flags, why didn't he take the appropriate action? Why did he just allow it to go through and keep Bugnini around, even if he sent him to Iran?
I understand that. We've talked about this before, Joe, and I understand I understand that because it makes sense. What your reaction is a sensible one, but things in the Vatican were not sensible. They didn't run on sensible. They ran on two levels: ecclesiastical diplomacy, and all sorts of intrigue. This is the world that most of them lived in. I don't know that it's changed at all. As a matter of fact, I do know it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. The only thing that have changed are the players. But the same kind of thing exists still today. And of course, you've got everyone fearful of losing his job. In those days past and today, it's the same thing. So when you eliminated somebody to eliminate, you promoted. That's how you got rid of people. Wow. You simply didn't throw them out. You didn't do that. Not to a bishop. You could do that to the lesser clergy, to a priest, even to a Monsignor, but not to a bishop. A bishop not. Bishops were the old boy club. That was it. And they took care of themselves. Rumor has it they still do.
I made this point on Saturday. I was at a private event. Bishop Strickland was there with me, and we were talking to a small group of people.
What an outstanding man, Strickland.
Yeah, amen.
What an outstanding, godly man. Great man.
Amen. Yeah, he's coming to our event, our big conference in August in Niagara Falls, too. We're looking forward to it. But I made that point, excellent. And I was telling him I was telling everybody there how I have interviewed canceled priests, and I said there's a tragedy with the priests that the bishops that's different for bishops, and I knew he was sitting next to me when I said it, and I said, when a bishop gets canceled, it's not the same as when a priest gets canceled. Canonically, there are different statuses, and for a priest, it's even more tragic. And the new, and I think it's new. Maybe you can correct me, and it's been around a long time. But it seems like the new method is the process is the punishment for priests. So you get a priest you don't like, you isolate him, and you put him in canonical limbo land. You never laicize him. You just cut him like a kite. He's just dangling in the wind. And that priest sometimes goes on to, act like lay people and conduct like lay people, even though they've never been laicized. They don't know. It's like it's part of the process to punish them this way. Yes. And they're just left in this limbo. And it's a tragedy because they still want to be a priest. They still are priests. And they're just, left to suffer this way. Whereas a bishop, to your point, they can't do that to the bishop. It's so even Strickland, even Strickland gets to enjoy his cancelization is, I would say, far more digestible than it is for a lot of canceled priests. Do you think that's true?
On one level, yes, Joe, and on another level, no, because what they've done to Strickland is unheard of. It's just it's outrageous what they've done to him. They've taken away his right to act as a bishop in his own diocese, and at the same time left him as a bishop. So, but he can't. He's in his own limbo. They put him in a special limbo for bishops.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remember something too. I don't know how this works in the world. I've had secular jobs when I was growing up. I was in advertising. I was a bartender for a while, this and the other. I understand how things kind of work in the world, but in the clergy, they work very differently. The clergy, there's so much innuendo, there's so much rumor, there's so much nonsense that people would not imagine exist in the clergy. You would think that they would be bigger men and more forgiving because they're more associated with Christ and forgiveness and Christ-likeness, right? But no, when something is said about you, everybody takes 10 giant steps back. You don't hear from friends any longer. That's it. Nobody wants to be associated with you. You'll get telephone calls. Well, so and so said this, and so said that. Well, would you like to go here? I don't know if we should be seen in public.
Right.
Can you imagine? Yeah, seriously.
No, I get that. I've had that happen to me.
I talked to priests. This is a common thing among these priests. They said they talked to old classmates. They were best friends for 25 years. No, I don't think we should be seen in public. I said, well, what do you think? Somebody's going to come up with a blow dart and hit you in the back with a poison arrow and kill you while you're having soup or something? What's the matter with you?
I mean, they do have Bond villains now in the Vatican, so yeah. I mean, what do you think it means What do you think it means when Archbishop Viola is wearing the ring of Bugnini? I mean, that is signaling such an agenda.
If it's true, what a message he's sending out, huh?
Right, exactly. It's so crazy.
I mean, talk about subtle.
Right, exactly. It's so. Yeah. Oh, the other day I was thinking about you too. I was thinking about you just the other day when that report came out about how Pope Francis is now potentially going to be investigated by the UN for wiretapping because he apparently gave his authority to the Vatican investigators to wiretap this British citizen who allegedly defrauded the Vatican in that warehouse deal in Chelsea there. So, and I thought, wiretapping. Here's an actual report of someone else talking about wiretapping from the Vatican. Well, Father Charles Murr has been saying this for years.
You, Joe. Sometimes I don't understand you. Does that shock you?
Well, I guess it's validation, I guess is where I'm going with that. It's just validation. You've been saying it for years. And here is another source basically saying, yeah, this is a thing. It happened to me, and he wanted some justice on that. And the whole time I'm thinking, how many times when we've talked about stories like this, your book, Murder in the 33rd Degree, and all of that it contains, and how many Catholics go, oh, that's just tinfoil hat wearing nonsense. And you're like, no.
Oh, no, it's not. Oh, believe me, it's not.
Yeah, right.
Believe me, it's not.
It's a thing. It's a thing. By the way, Chris Schoonmaker, good morning to you, Chris, says Our Lady of Quito prophesied stonecutters would take down the church in 1600. Bugnini and Baggio, etc., were the manifestation of this, and this continues today. It does seem that way, Chris. It does for sure. Hey, Rosie, good morning to you. Amerigun. I like the pun there. Good morning to you. Sci-Fi Mike, good morning to you. Patriot Man USA over on the Rumbles, good morning. Glad to see you guys here. Praise be to God. If you guys have a question for Father Charles Murr, do leave it in the com box, and hopefully producer Jake will help me find those. I see Chesty Marine. I see Antonia Mary Swift. Good morning to you. Praise be to God. I'm glad you're here as well. It says, I know that the ring of a deceased pope is destroyed, but don't they also destroy the cardinal? Do they destroy? Well, Bugnini wasn't a cardinal; he was an archbishop. Do the bishops destroy the rings upon death? Are those rings destroyed or no?
No.
Just
they're usually left to family members as part of their personal property. No,
I think we've got one on display in our church basement museum.
Really?
Yeah,
probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, Lost Creole, Paul, Colleen, James, good morning to everybody. Glad you guys are here today. Brandon Joseph, good to see you guys here. Good morning. Eileen, of course, Becky Hansen, Damon, good morning to the team over on the Rumbles. Jerome, good morning to you. One of the points, Father Murr, that I made during the radio side of our show today was I was trying to talk directly to Novus Ordo Catholics. I was Novus Ordo Catholic for a long, long, long time before I went to the traditional Mass. And I still don't know what I'm doing. All right. So it's a journey. We're all on it. But I tried to say that there's a common sense, there's a smell test that I believe even the Novus Ordo Catholic should be paying. Like, in other words, even Novus Ordo Catholics who plan to never go to a TLM should care about the reports about a document that wants to kill the TLM. My argument is this. I would argue that most Catholics, and most Novus Ordo going Catholics, would never in a million years say, we should force the Eastern Orthodox to change divine liturgy to make it look like the Novus Ordo so that we can all have unity. They would not say that. They wouldn't agree to that. Never. To them, that would feel wrong. Never. Like, they wouldn't want to take away the Russian liturgy or the Ukrainian or the Ruthenian or the Coptic. They would never in a million years. And yet they seem to be okay with the killing of the tradition in the West. That's bizarre. That's darn near schizophrenic.
Well, you know what it is? It's just a minute, Joe. Just a minute. I see what I see the way you're looking at it, but look at it from this point of view. They who are in power now see those who follow tradition as a threat to themselves, as a threat to them, and also what they're saying is, what you've done to us the past 60 years, we're not taking any longer. Right? Therefore, those in power have to act. They have to be obliterated. This has to be wiped off the map, and that's what they're doing, and that's what they intend to do. Frankly, I don't think they're going to be successful. I think it's going to be a calamity. I think this is the preface to a calamity, but that's what they're going to do because they can't stand the criticism. See, they feel that anything. Look, it's like to be a poor example. You lose a friend. Let's say you lose a wife, and the wife remarries and she's with a man and she's having a wonderful life. Well, you can't stand that. That bothers you. They should be having a miserable life. You should be having a good life. You were the one who divorced the wife, right? But It turned out the other way around. Well, this is sort of like that. Yeah. They see the success. Look, they're looking at the success, the growth, the real growth that's been happening in the Roman Catholic Church over the last 20 years, even more than that, but certainly more in the last 20 years, is with the traditional Latin Mass goers. They're actually building. They're building cathedrals. They're building churches. All of a sudden, that this is serious. And everything that they do when they expand and they grow, the other side takes as a personal insult. Mm. So they have to be eliminated, right? This is the problem. Rather than say, just a minute, why in the world couldn't these people be offering and celebrating the same Mass that's been going on in one form or another for the last 1,800 years? Let them do that. Why not make it into a rite?
Yeah.
What happened with the Anglicans, Joseph? What happened with the Anglicans, the Anglican Catholics? Don't they have their own rite?
Well,
not the Anglican Church of England. Isn't there an Anglican rite?
You're opening a can of worms right now. I'm going to get myself in trouble if I answer this question because I'm going to upset some friends who go to the Anglican Use Mass. That has now become the personal ordinary to the Chair of St. Peter in, with the Anglicans coming in. The Mass that they say is more akin to the Anglican worship service than it is, the actual Mass that they left behind in the 16th century when they abandoned the faith. I say they should go back to their own tradition, and the Sorum Rite should be the Mass that is said within the Anglican Communion.
Well, we always defined the Episcopalians and the Anglicans as those who preferred beauty to truth. But anyway,
send your emails to Father Murr on that one.
I hope people realize we're kind of joshing a little bit.
Oh yeah, we're having a good one. That's fun. Praise be to God.
In good humor.
By the way, Crazy Faith 77.
The point. What I'm trying to say is, I don't see why, and the reason I don't see why is because there is no why.
Yeah.
The people of the Latin Mass should be permitted to have their own rite. That's all there is to it. It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Yeah,
but they refuse because it's going against the regime.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's the way the regime is seeing it.
Yeah, morale.
Nobody else is seeing it that. Just those in power.
The beatings will continue until morale improves.
There you go. There you go.
I just saw that on someone online was saying there were traditional faithful having a rally in support of tradition somewhere in France, and some internet commentator said, "See, this is exactly why the ban is needed." And I said, "What you're saying is the beatings will continue until morale improves." The fact you're resisting being beaten is why you deserve to be beaten.
That's exactly.
That's exactly 100%. The attitude. It's ridiculous.
By the way, Crazy Faith 77 says, just speak for the ones you know, Joe. Not all Novus Ordos are like that. Go ahead, Father. Sorry.
Well, the proof of this is try to talk to somebody who's not Catholic at all and explain to him the situation. Especially if he or she is a pragmatic person. They'll tell you there's no reason that this can't be resolved in real quick.
Yeah.
By permitting the traditionalists their own Catholic rite. That's all. Very simple. Very, very simple.
I was going to say to Crazy Faith 77, you're not wrong. I know that not all Novus Ordos are that way, but I wanted to make the point that I believe that even the Novus Ordo Catholic who never plans to go to Church Latin Mass should be concerned about this, because that you should see a violation here, and it's common sense. It's not that you agree with traditional Catholics like myself or whatever. It's that you see there's a violation, and I believe that almost all Novus Ordos should be able to come to that conclusion. And if you don't, because I believe it's based on common sense, and if you don't, then I'm going to argue it's because of a political agenda. Like an ideology of sorts, the kind that Pope Francis says he hates, these ideologies. Well, I believe there's an ideology behind this that is at play. It's not really about liturgies or tradition itself. It is more about an ideology and that's why in the conversation on the radio side of our show today, I actually went to that interview with Andrea Grillo, who basically makes the point in the first question of the interview. You need to be a team player, so we will burn everything down just to make sure that you're a team player. Like that's bizarre. That's ideology right there.
Would that work in anything else? Well, I mean, I worked for Joseph Stalin,
right? Yes, 100%.
I mean, worked for and Mao Zedong. They made it work. But does that make any sense to a man who's born in liberty? It just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. And as I say, the solution is so incredibly simple. The solution, Pope Benedict came up with the solution. John Paul II came up with the solution. What they were doing was exactly reconciling this rift. They were putting it together, and it was being put together beautifully. It wasn't a problem. In the same parishes, they were having the Novus Ordo, and then they would have 1 or 2 Latin masses of the Vetus Ordo. There was no problem. As a matter of fact, the problem was that many people who went to the Novus Ordo were confused, and they went to the Vetus Ordo and remained.
Yes,
remained.
And then they were like,
"Here's the thing.
What? This is amazing."
Here's a little difference that's happening. When you belong to the Novus Ordo, and I've talked to hundreds of people who have had this problem. They move to a new city, as mobility is really part of our American culture with jobs. They move to a new city. They're looking for a church. They have to go church shopping.
Yeah.
For weeks and weeks and weeks until they find, and this is all Novus Ordo.
Yeah.
Until they find a place where that's not too crazy
Not too crazy.
But they have to go through 10 different parishes to find, and they're seemingly or supposedly all the same. Well, they're not all the same. Mm-hmm. That's the chaos that people want to avoid. So this is just a Novus Ordo. I mean, I know people who drive by 4 different parishes, Catholic parishes, to get to the Novus Ordo Mass that doesn't drive them crazy. Right.
Yeah, I know it. And Crazy Faith also said, I would love to go to the TLM, but there isn't any in my area. And that's a true problem, too. That's part of the tragedy of the Traditionis Custodes was, like, even in my neck of the woods, it was flourishing. The TLM was being said at Novus Ordo parishes that had never seen a TLM before. And Catholics were being introduced to this rich tradition, and they were loving it. And then all of a sudden, they killed it off. That is the real tragedy. Yep. It's not the SSPX chapel or the FSSP parish or the Institute of Christ the King or what have you. No, they're still here. And now they're packed. Their parking lots are full, and we have to go out and raise $20 million to build a bigger church because we can't house the number of people that are there. The real tragedy is it was growing in the suburban parish, as Father Mateg would say, St. Typicals. And now it's not. And those young seminarians who were learning, who became priests, they were learning the TLM, and they were the ones saying these masses at these parishes. Now they're forbidden to say it. That is a tragedy. That's an abuse, frankly, of those priests, of the faithful, and of the tradition.
Of course it is. Nobody would disagree with you. No one would disagree with you. But tell me, would this make sense anywhere else?
No.
Would any other institution that you know, or government, or business, or anything else operate in such a way? Would they do that?
Yeah, well, the mob would.
Would they try to accommodate everybody?
Yeah. Where's the big tent? I mean, there's lots of room for the actual clowns that do the circus act for Pope Francis at the Wednesday audiences. There's actual room for them. There's room for the comedians. There's room for every so-called Catholic politician who supports abortion, gay marriage, IVF, and all the rest, and endless wars. Right. They're all allowed to hang out in the big church, but not traditional Catholics. That, again, my argument is every Catholic, no matter where you go to Mass, you should all be concerned about that. That should be a red flag, and because it doesn't pass the smell test. Becky Hansen is asking a question as a follow-up to the Bugnini thing. She says, question, I understand Bugnini was promoted to Iran due to liturgy issues and Freemason claim. Was he found really to be a Freemason? If so, why do others say he was allegedly a Freemason? Why not clear the air on it?
Well, it's the point of my book. I asked in that book, and I've asked outside of that book, please show us the Gagnon report. Make it public.
Yeah.
Make it public. There's nothing to hide in it. Make it public. Well, they won't. In the Gagnon report, this is exactly the question that Cardinal Gagnon dealt with. Was one of the many problems, but one of the major ones was the Masonic influence in the Roman Curia, members of the Roman Curia who were Masons and pushing for the Masonic agenda. Liberty, fraternity, equality, right? That's what they wanted. Oof. And wasn't that also the Alta Vendita was asking for, they were waiting, what did they say exactly? I'm trying to remember. They knew that they could never attain, they knew that they could never get a man in the papacy. Wasn't that it, Joe? They knew they could never get a man in the papacy to be a Freemason, but they would be happy with one who was in agreement with them, or who would be useful to them in the position.
Yes, somebody asked in the chat box, is Pope Francis a Freemason? And I was going to bring that up and say, no, I don't believe he's a Freemason because he doesn't have to be. And the Alta Vendita doesn't want him to be anyway. The Alta Vendita just wanted a Freemason-friendly, a Freemason-adjacent Pope to be on the team, because that would be far more effective. In fact, in the Alta Vendita, which I have this book here, The War of the Antichrist with the Church and Christian Civilization by Monsignor George F. Dillon, edited by Joshua Charles. I interviewed Joshua Charles about this book last year.
Joshua, right?
Great book.
Joshua Charles?
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. I'm trying to find that quote real quick, if I can get my hands on it really quickly. But it's the same. It's the French Revolution. Liberty, equality, fraternity. That's all the French Revolution. And the permanent instruction of the Alta Vendita, page 119. So I can skip to that real quick. By the way, Anne, Jake, tell me, what is Anne's comment?
Anne says, I personally believe there is something more than an ideology behind this disruption, behind the corruption of the clergy. But deliverance requires a sincere desire to repent and to change.
Yeah. I believe it is more as well.
You're talking about the diabolical, and we must never negate the diabolical or not pay attention to it, because it's always part of the church. The diabolical is always part of the church. Where the greatest presence of God is on this earth, there is the greatest presence of the devil. You can be sure of that. That's the lesson that Monsignor Marini taught me that night we were walking in Rome. I was scandalized by the people we encountered who insulted a priest, and I said, right here in the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica, and he started laughing. He said, if you would meet some of those I work with inside that basilica, inside the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
So I mean,
okay. So
and
let me quote.
And I was scandalized at that. And he said, why are you scandalized at that? You believe that the Pope is somebody very special and very close to God, don't you? I said, I do. He said, well, what a better place. Where else do you think the devil would be? Close to that, as close as he possibly can get to that. So don't discount the diabolical in what's happening.
So this is the permanent instruction to the Alta Vendita, which is so when I say Freemason, I think too many people think of the guys wearing the funny hats, driving little go-karts at parades, and raising money for Shriners hospitals. There's that level of Shriners. There's that level of Freemasonry. I was third degree Master Mason, the Blue Lodge. My dad, 32nd degree Scottish Rite, still is. But what we're talking about is the level above that. The Masons that cooperated with the lodges and to carry out a more nefarious agenda. So we're talking about a level above, really. Yes. But this is the quote from the Alta Vendita. It says, quote, the Pope, whoever he may be, will never come to the secret societies. It is for the secret societies to come first to the church in the resolve to conquer the two. The work which we have undertaken is not the work of a day, nor of a month, nor of a year. It may last many years, a century perhaps, but in our ranks the soldier dies and the fight continues. We do not mean to win the popes to our cause, to make them neophytes of our principles and propagators of our ideas. That would be a ridiculous dream. No matter in what manner events may turn, should cardinals or prelates, for example, enter willingly or by surprise in some manner into a part of our secrets, it would be by no means a motive to desire their elevation to the see of Peter. That elevation would destroy us. In other words, him being an admitted Freemason would be an end to their dreams. Instead, he must be a secret cooperator. Ambition, it goes on, ambition alone would bring them to apostasy from us. The needs of power would force them to immolate us. That which we ought to demand, that which we should seek and expect, as the Jews expected the Messiah, is a pope according to our wants. Close quote from the Alta Vendita, as quoted by Monsignor Charles F. Dillon in his work, The War of the Antichrist. Great book. We should put a link to it. Fantastic. Sharon, you're amazing. She loves you, Father Charles Murr, by the way. Sharon does. Praise be to God.
I love you too, Sharon.
Looking forward to hanging out with you and your husband again, Sharon, in Niagara Falls this August at our conference.
Have you checked in on the poll lately, Joe?
That's what I was getting ready to do right now. It says, do you believe the rumors of a final solution ban on the TLM is coming soon? 75% say it's happening. 11% say not going to happen. 13% say something's coming, but not that bad. So 75% of this audience right now believes that it's going to happen, that they are going to try to ban the TLM. My opinion remains the same. Father Charles, I ask you. So yesterday I said, I know they're trying. They want to. There is a contingent that wants to. They're pushing for it. But I'm not convinced, somewhat controversial opinion of mine, I'm not convinced Pope Francis truly cares all that much about the TLM, the Novus Ordo, or any liturgy for that matter. I think he is only throwing bones to his constituency. He's only trying to help those that got him elected, that supported his election. So it's their pet project, so he supports them. But I don't personally believe he cares all that much one way or the other. He doesn't really seem all that interested in any liturgy. What do you say?
He doesn't seem to be interested in any liturgy.
I don't think he is. I don't think it motivates him.
Well, all I can tell you is that is what he's done. He has named everyone who's close to him. He's brought them closer in affiliation to his government. The government he's put together are all people are like-minded people, and many of those do not want anything to do with the Latin liturgy. They want nothing to do with tradition. They want nothing to do with anything. You have to remember something too. As we have a lot of lay people, we have a number of lay people. I know some of them, and I think you do too, who go to Mass every Sunday, sometimes even more than that. Good family men and family women. But in all earnestness, they are practical atheists. They don't believe anything. I know a lot of people who are active enough in their parish because they want to support the school where their children are going to school. They have no time for religion. Not really. Religion really isn't it's an appendix. And they go to golfing events and they have socials and they have cocktail parties to raise money for the parish. But they're not really concerned about matters theological or matters religious. For all practical purposes, they are practical atheists today. And there's study. Jordan Peterson does a great study on what that practical atheism means. We also have those kind of people governing in part the church. People would think it's hard for a priest or a bishop or a cardinal to be an atheist. I don't think it's so hard. I think you can easily lose the faith over the years if you're not practicing it, A, if you're not praying, B, if you're not offering Mass daily, C, if you're not in the mix, you can easily lose that great gift. Look at how many people were in love. Everybody that I know was in love when he and she got married. 20 years later, many of them are divorced. How did that happen? Right. Well, it happened because they weren't taking care of each other. They weren't taking care of the relationship. They weren't fostering it. The same thing happens with priests, with the clergy, and believing in God. And it can happen. So many times you have people who really are not believers, but they are guiding the laity.
Yeah.
to their own agenda. Right? I'm sorry if that scandalizes anybody, but it's the truth, and we all know it's the truth.
Yes, Becky asks a question about follow up from the Masons question. Would clearing the air then hinder the dialogue of the church is having with Freemasons now? Oh, it certainly hinders their agenda, doesn't it? I mean, isn't that bizarre that all of a sudden you have prelates at the Vatican, high, powerful positions, trying to have dialogue with the Freemasons? You know, this is bizarre times we live in. In the past, they would have had that, but it was secret. They would you wouldn't have known about it. Today, they're happy to tell you about it. Like, let that sink in for a second. Yeah. That's a symptom of the times
today
that we're in.
It's a boast. It's actually a boast. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Bizarre.
Amazing.
Instead of meeting people where they're at, discipling them, helping them journey to where they got to go, which is salvation, instead of doing that, we hang out with people in their brokenness and pretend like it's all okay and fine. And then we talk about how, we can just be friends now with the Freemasons because we both believe in fraternity. We both want the brotherhood of man to just get along, and then we can build, ecumenical churches in Dubai, for instance, and pretend like everything is fine and okay. It's not fine, and it ain't okay. These are bad things, and the church ought not to be participating in them in an official capacity. Instead, we ought to keep a clear, consistent voice for truth, because truth is a person. And it doesn't do our neighbor any good if we lie about that person, who that person is, and what the actual ramifications are about accepting that person in your life. If you have a relationship with Jesus, then your life must change accordingly. And for most, we give ourselves a pass. Oh, I love Jesus. And then I just continue to commit my sins and make excuses for my sins and whatever. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. And I'm going to argue you don't have to have read the Catechism of the Council of Trent, have a PhD in theology from Notre Dame or CUA to come to a conclusion that says these are bad things. This stuff is dumb and we ought not to be doing it. But that's where we're at, right? Christine says, so true, Father Murr. You probably get that a lot. Everybody just walks up to you and says, you're so true, Father Murr. Christine seems to think so.
No, not everybody.
How do the sheep feel? That's the real question.
Not everybody.
Many not concerned with the theological and spiritual. In fact, many don't know they are supposed to be. They're supposed to be. They've not heard it. I'm not sure what that means. Catholics given more must teach others for their souls. Yeah, I guess the bottom line is, Christine, if I'm saying this correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. But to those who are given much, much is expected. Catholicism is the one church Christ founded and provided to the world, to humanity, as the sacrament of salvation on earth. To those who are given more, more is expected. Since we have been given this gift, we are expected to react accordingly. The rest of the world, Protestants raised in the Protestant traditions, raised in the ecumenical communities, and they've never known better. Okay, less is expected of them, but more is expected of us to help them come in, right?
That's right.
Patriot Man USA says, smoke of Satan is turning into a raging fire. Well, it would feel that way. It definitely would feel that way. There's a lot of great commentary today, by the way. If you're new here and we appreciate having you on the team, make sure to come back. Mary Ogle says 100% going to happen. In Savannah, Georgia, we are given an extension of 2 years, but we were not told when the extension started, so we have expected it to happen at any time. Our bishop will not resist.
That's very Soviet.
That is like, no, you know what that is? That is a play. What a genius move from this bishop, taking taking a strategy and a hat tip straight from the Princess Bride. The good pirate, what was his name? Tomorrow?
Yeah, the Dread Pirate Roberts.
The Dread Pirate Roberts every day told him, tomorrow you're going to die.
Yep.
And then every day it was the same routine. Tomorrow you're going to die. It never happened. So maybe that's...
He was right.
Maybe one day he'll be right.
I'll probably cancel your mass in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but maybe he's just saying it to for appearance's sake.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Father Murr? So I think the guy with the Bugnini ring at the Vatican is basically making the argument, Tradizione, and I envision him saying this while petting a hairless cat sitting in a Bond villain like chair in a cold dark room. Basically just saying Traditionis Custodes was not far enough. We need more. I can hear this sort of evil villain voice he's got while saying this. But the argument is most bishops have ignored Traditionis Custodes and not implemented it. I don't know that I actually agree with that. What do you think?
First of all, who is the great French cardinal under the king, Louis
Richelieu?
Louis the 14th.
Was it Richelieu?
No, I don't think
Richelieu.
Yeah.
Was it Richelieu?
He had a cat. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Richelieu. Yes.
Of course he had
a cat. He had a cat. As a matter of fact, there is one portrait of him with the cat doing exactly what you were saying. Yes. Anyway, what's the question again? I'm sorry. I got distracted with that.
So one of the arguments is Traditionis Custodes didn't go far enough because a lot of the world's bishops simply ignored it or barely gave it any effort. So they want to force the hand of these bishops. So that's the argument. I'm not as convinced that a lot of the world's bishops did ignore it. Like, my cardinal certainly wasn't going to the extent of killing it off, but at the same time, he went a long way to implementing it. So I feel like most bishops were in that category. So do you think most bishops ignored it?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think they did. I think they actually did.
A lot of bishops, a number of bishops ignored it.
Oh, you
But
do?
the
You think that they
majority
ignored it?
Yes, but the majority of bishops implemented it.
Mm-hmm.
They did what
does
they
that
could.
say about the bishops?
Well, it says a lot about the bishops. It says a lot about them. One of the things that I'll give credit to His Holiness, he's examining the way bishops are chosen, which is a very good thing to examine. It's a very good thing to examine. That should be examined. And Pope Francis is he wants that examined, how bishops are chosen. They're not just today. They're just chosen diplomatically, and they're chosen by the old boys club. We want a new member, right? That would really be nice to stop, and get bishops get priests who are really loved and respected for truth tellers and by their people in their parishes. This would be a very good start.
It would be a nice start.
I'm not saying that all bishops are bad. They're not. There's some wonderful men who are bishops. But whenever you get to a point where you have to look at them and you're reminded of St. Thomas More and St. John Fisher. St. John Fisher being the only bishop in England who opposed the king. Of all of them, there's something wrong. And when they're all quiet, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
There's just something wrong. They're not supposed to be quiet. They're supposed to be voices.
Exactly. Athanasius wrote his letters to his flock from exile all the time, sending his words back so that they could be proclaimed. He was never silent, ever, which is why I like Bishop Strickland continuing to be more vocal now than he has ever been before. Hey, KSW, you are amazing. God bless you and God love you. You and Sharon both are amazing people. Thank you for your support and being on the team. Hey, Drew Black says, and from your lips to God's ears, Drew Black, he says, I love Father Murr. Okay. Praise be to God. We all love Father Murr.
I'm fond of Father Murr too. That's why Father Murr is trying to watch what he's saying.
That's right. But Father
Murr is very partial to the idea of keeping his head attached to his neck.
Speaking of necks attached to heads, Brandon Joseph, what a fantastic segue there. Brandon Joseph asked the question of what does Father Murr think about the monarch? So the last great French monarch lost his head from his neck, but there are prophecies of a great French monarch to come to replace him that will bring back Christendom and even give us a good pope. What are your thoughts on Henry V and the prophecy of the French monarch?
I'll tell you what. For those, look, I understand. People always. This is human. This is human. We want to go back to what was known and what worked. But believe me, the monarchy all over the world really served very few people, and was served by great majorities of people. Right? It did. If you were lucky, if you were fortunate enough to get a king who was a saint, St. Louis IX, for example, was a saint, wonderful, but few and far between. A lot of them were not good rulers. I don't think it's time to go back to that. What I think what we have to do is we have to find a better form of government. Even democracy is not the best form. A republic is not the best form. We're progressing. We're going on, and we get new situations that arise and new questions that come in that have to be answered, and with new ways of ruling. I think I think we have to be open to new ways of ruling because we're in a new world. We're not going. I'm telling you this. I'm being very careful because Spain has a monarchy, and I shouldn't say that it's not functioning too well. But most Spaniards that I know, for example, have little time for this, little time for it at all.
Wow,
it's just not. It's not working. If you've got something like England, I think that's kind of neat. That they've got a monarchy, they're holding on to that tradition. That's good, and there's a moral voice attached to the king and to the queen when they're living moral lives. They have a moral voice. When they're not living moral lives, they don't have a moral voice.
Right.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that one.
Yeah. Michelle, you're amazing. First time on the board. Praise be to God. God bless you, Michelle. Michelle Norleen. Love the fact that you're here. Praise be to God. Thank you for doing that. You're very, very, very kind. You just reminded me of Matthew 23. Father Charles Murr, call no man father. You know, that gotcha that we get from our Protestant brothers and sisters. You call your priest father. Matthew 23 says, call no man father. I mean, but the point of Matthew 23 is exactly what you said. You know, the king, if he leads according to his state in life, according to his role, what he's supposed to be doing, leads his people with that moral compass, with that courageous Christian-focused leadership, then yeah, praise be to God. Long live the king. But when he abuses his office, when he leads people astray, when he abuses his subjects, like King Solomon did towards the end of his sovereignty, then you see bad things happen. King Solomon took 666 gold talents from his vassal kingdoms every year. Is 666 ever a good number? No. King Solomon had 1,000 wives and concubines. Is that a good thing? No, because implicitly in sacred scripture is monogamy, not polygamy. Polygamy is always considered evil in sacred scripture, going back to Genesis. So he broke that one. Okay, then he had entire cities of cavalries, which Deuteronomy made very clear the king cannot multiply horses, especially from Egypt, cannot multiply wives, especially pagan ones, and cannot multiply gold. And he had broken all three of those, which is why when he dies, there's a schism and a civil war within Israel, and the kingdom is broken up, and the 10 northern tribes go back to worshiping golden calves. The rest is, as they say, bad history. So that's where we're at, and too many fathers, whether they were clerics at the Vatican or whether they are in my house and my kids are complaining about it, too many fathers have broken their solemn obligation to be good fathers and to lead people in the right direction, whomever's placed under their care and custody. And they are abusing that term father because that term father is God the Father. I think that's what Jesus was talking about. I believe the same to be true for kings. But would you say, to follow up that question with, would you say, Father Murr, that if you had another King Louis IX, that you would prefer that over anything else?
You know what? I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to answer as St. Bernard answered, or St. Bernard. Huh? They asked him that very question. They asked him the question was, well, let me give you two answers, one from St. Bernard and one from St. Thomas Aquinas. The question was put to St. Thomas Aquinas by his students. Who is better to govern? A rich man from a noble family, or a poor man who understands the problems of people? And Aquinas answered this way. He said, a rich man, the rich man. And his students disagreed immediately. They said, well, that's unfair. What are you saying? He said, no, Thomas said, no. He said, here's the thing. The rich man is already corrupt. He's already lost. He's already corrupt. If you take the poor man, he's innocent. He may lose his soul. The rich man has already done that. He said, take him.
And have we not? And can we not see the fruits of that in modern democracy? That's my question.
There you are. There you are.
Yeah.
But Saint Bernard said this: give me a man who knows how to govern, as opposed to a saint. Okay, you can get in trouble with saints. You can get in trouble with saints. this is a problem. Governing is its own category, and you have to know what you're doing. Saints have made. I can just tell you this: saints can make horrible superiors because they're not practical, and to a great degree they don't understand human nature because they don't suffer from a lot of things. They're saints, right?
But there's a couple of crossovers. St. Gregory the Great, I think, would be a good example of that. St. Ambrose might also be a great example of that.
There are exceptions always. Yeah. But what you're looking for is the man or the woman who can govern.
Yeah.
Right? And if they happen to be a saint, marvelous, all the more, great. But don't look for a saint to govern like that, because it's not going to happen.
I think I believe it's tomorrow is Pope Saint Silverius, who was a very holy man, but was basically beset on all sides and couldn't. Was eventually just exiled by a Byzantine general who invaded. Like, he just was not able to necessarily hold things together. And I think it was Pope Honorius who resigned the papacy because he was a very holy man but couldn't govern. He just couldn't govern.
Well, it's not like we have any modern examples of that. Benedict XVI. Yeah. Hey, by the way, Robert Stevenson says, I have difficulty with one wife. One is more than enough for me. From your lips to God's ears, Robert Stevenson. Yay and amen. I've said that so many times. Like, are you kidding me? I can't handle the one I got. Like, forget it. I'm going to live a hermit's life if it doesn't work out at this point. I'm going to go live in a mountain cave. It's over.
You know what's one thing I wonder just about the rumors of the new document and everything. How many of these ideologues who hate the TLM were even happy with Traditionis Custodes as it existed? Because it clearly left so many loopholes and, opportunities to still say, well, you can still say it, just can't be in a parish church, can't be this, can't be that. Like, how happy were they with something that just kind of tried to ghettoize the TLM as opposed to actually banning it outright? So I don't think they've ever been happy, let alone with the implementation.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that you're hitting an absolutely important point. Just remember that I have to be careful of that. Some of the people who were involved with even drawing up these documents don't necessarily even care. They don't care. They were told what to do and they're doing it. That's it. Period. They could care less. Care less.
Yeah.
When I worked in the Vatican, I met all sorts of people, a lot of monsignors. I knew some priests and monsignors who had not heard a confession in 10 years. They had not heard a confession. They had not been in a parish. They had not been anything. And this is also a very easy way to lose your soul, by not having any contact with the people of God. And we have a lot of those. What was the Morris West wrote of the Shoes of the Fisherman? Was it the shoe? No, The Devil's Advocate. Pardon me. He wrote The Devil's Advocate. If you get a chance, you should read that. It's very beautiful. It begins with a Monsignor from the Vatican who's in the cause for the saints, and he's been diagnosed with cancer. And all of a sudden, he has very little time to live, and how his life changes, and how he gets back to God, because he had gotten away from God without even knowing it himself. Anyway, where am I going with all that? I don't know. I'm just saying, I get on these tangents. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
That should be a podcast for you, the Murr tangent.
Yes.
The Father Murr tangent.
The Murr tangent sounds like an old Robert Ludlum novel or something.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, the Murr
yes,
tangent.
It does. Yes, it does. I like that.
Praise be to God. Hey, we're just about out of time. I've got to run here to another meeting in a second, so we're going to be saying goodbye to Father Charles Murr, which I am so glad stepped on. Even though he wasn't able to join us for the radio side, we had a great conversation this hour. So. There's a lot of people in the chat box. I wish I could read them all. I'm out of time, but they're all saying, "We love Father Murr. We love Father Murr." No,
well, if
Father
they
Murr.
do, would you ask them all to pray for me? To pray for Father Murr. He needs
I will.
prayers.
I will. Father Murr does need prayers. Praise be to God. Or maybe it's his sheep that need the prayers. That's the question.
No, it's he himself. I'm telling you. These are trying times coming up.
We need a Catholic Take pilgrimage to Spain just to give us an excuse to hang out with Father Charles Murr. That's what we need.
I think you should get over here right away.
Before it's too late. I'm the king bans me from the country. God bless you, Father. Thank you for being on with us again today. And we'll see you guys tomorrow morning. We're going to be talking about Bruno Cornicchiola and the actual revelations of Our Lady in Rome. We'll see you there. God love you.